Today I'm going to talk about kale salad. Now, kale is one of the it vegetables of late. Everybody wants to have kale in some way or another, and a lot of times it's not prepared in the most nutritious way. So we're going to change it up a little bit and do something that's not going to add a lot of fat to it. It's not going to cook it a long time. In fact, it's not going to cook it at all. So I'm starting with the regular kale that you could grow in your garden. There are different varieties, and it really doesn't matter which one you have. Any one of them will work, anywhere from the curly one to the ornamental variety. First thing I did was wash it, and that's a critical step anytime you're working with greens. You want to make sure that you put it through at least 3 washes to make sure, because as you can see, it's all rough and curly and it grows close to the ground. It's really easy for sand and dirt to get in here, and that's our goal, to wash off the dirt, the sand, the dust, any bugs that might be accompanying it along the way. You're not really going to get much microbial difference between washed kale and not washed kale because the surface of a kale is so craggy, like it is on all produce, that and the microbes that we have on those things are so sticky that you really can't do much as far as washing them off. But we can get dirt and dust, and we understand that most of the produce that we get in is fairly clean anyway, so as far as not having a lot of microbial activity. So we've washed it through 3 washes. The next thing you want to do is get as much water off it as you can. Now this is important whether you're using it right away, if you're going to wait a little bit longer. So I'm going to put it in a salad spinner. But before I do that, I'm going to rip it off the thick part here. That's not going to work for the recipe that I'm working on today. You could, if you wanted to, save these and cook them. It's usable in a cooked form, just not so usable in the raw state, which is where we're going. So using 2 fingers, or you could use a knife and lay it down and cut it off here. It's just as easy to me just to use a couple of fingers and pull it off as you go. We'll get the rest of it in here. We're simply going to spin this through on a salad spinner to get as much water off it as possible, and then we'll go from there. One of the reasons that we did the spinning was keeping the water content down. Is also going to help reduce the amount of microbial activity we have. So now we want to cut this into smaller pieces for our salad. So you just bundle it together part at a time and take something like a chef knife and cut it down in about 1–1.5 inch strips, and then kind of go the other way, just making sure that you got your fingers out of the way every time you make a slice through. And then those are going to go in our big salad bowl. So we need about ½ pound of kale, which is actually a lot. But even though we're not going to cook this is going to condense, because we're going to cold cook it, so to speak. So to this I'm going to add 1/4 cup of orange juice. You could use other types of juices as well. You could use apple juice, you could use lemon juice, whichever one you either have or you prefer the taste of. And I'm also going to add 1/4 teaspoon of kosher salt. Now I'm not going to add quite all of it at this point, because what I find is that it's better to be able to adjust and put more in than to take some out. The salt will help, however, as far as helping it move together and reduce in space, but it's primarily going to be the acid that's going to be working on it. So using your clean hands, what you're going to do is massage the kale, and this may take anywhere from a couple of minutes to up to 5 minutes. So you're not just tossing it, you're actually getting your hands in there and rubbing it. That's our goal here, is to actually break down some of the cells and let the acid in there so that it will continue to help the kale collapse. All right, you can see that the kale has collapsed quite a bit. It's also gotten much brighter green than it was before. If I can bring over some that we haven't worked on, you'll be able to tell the difference in color. This one is brighter green. Some of the cells have started to break down. And this is actually what happens when it cooks. So this is sort of a cold cooking technique. We're going to add to it 2 teaspoons of olive oil is what I'm using, but any kind of a nice tasting vegetable oil will do. And then 1 cup of dried fruit, and I'm using craisins because I like the color contrast. Raisins would also work, golden raisins, dried blueberries, whatever you happen to have. And then again, you're just going to toss these together at this point. You no longer need to massage the kale to make it feel better. We just want to toss these together. Now, the goal at this point, if you were making this at home, would be to cover it tightly, and you could probably transfer it to a smaller bowl also, since we have managed to condense it down, and then cover it tightly and let it sit for at least 30 minutes. Now, most salads, when they're dressed with an acid and an oil, you pretty much need to use them fairly quickly. This is one that will keep for you for quite a while. So even though it looks like it took a lot of effort to get the kale to this point, you can do it the day before, you can do it on the weekend, and it'll keep for a couple of days for you. So you do want to give it a little bit of time for the flavors to blend, however, and at that point you'd use something better than your hand to serve it, but since I've not gotten to the store it for a while stage, I'm going to go ahead and do this. Kale is highly nutritious. That's why it's one of the very popular vegetables at this time. It does have a little bit of bitterness to it, which sometimes children don't take to. However, we've added the orange juice. We've also added the dried cranberries. And when you have something bitter and you combine it with something sweet, it knocks back that bitterness. So this may be a way to get some people in your family, whether they're children or adults who haven't been particularly fond of kale or other dark greens, to give it a try. And I hope you will. For Oklahoma Gardening, this is Barbara Brown, and this is Kale Salad.